Hello, everybody at John Wilmott. I'm going to offer two book reviews here, two books that I've read since the beginning of the lockdown 3 weeks ago. The first one is a non-fiction book called Hidden History of Britain by Michael Portillo. Michael Portillo was a politician in the 90s, and in fact he made it to a minister post. He was the defence minister. But since then, he's been making television documentaries on train journeys, canal journeys, has a real interest in Britain and certainly the history of Britain. Now, in this book, Michael Portillo visits many old buildings and places around Britain that have very much a hidden past. For instance, he visits a large building in Manchester that used to be a fire station. He visits a stately home in Cambridgeshire that used to be a hospital. He visited an island off the coast of Sussex that used to be a testing site for nuclear planes. So he visits lots of places, and using a series of documents and interviewing people, he unpicks the history of the place. And this is where I think the book really comes to life, because through investigations, reading documents, and certainly interviewing people who know the place or people who maybe even worked in the building, he really gets to the story of the building, and many wonderful sort of attributes certainly come through. They are fascinating, and they really do provide a very, very rich history of Britain, considering health, considering military, considering cultural development through the ages. Now, I think this book really, really does come to life when he interviews people who have been involved in some way in the building. For instance, in one chapter, he is on an island just off the coast of Britain where nuclear weapons and planes were being tested. And he was actually able to interview a flight navigator, a signalman who worked on the island during the Cuban Missile Crisis. And it really becomes apparent just how close the world was to a nuclear war in the 60s through interviewing this gentleman who worked on the island. I actually bought the book because of John Wilmott, actually. Michael Portillo was visiting Sutton Town Hall in December, and some of our musical students went and played at his talk there that he was giving to launch the book. So I went to support the young people and heard them play, which was brilliant, of course. And at the same time, went and had a chat with Michael Portillo and bought it. So there we go. Hidden History of Britain by Michael Portillo. A great run through the last 400 years of Britain through buildings, places, and most importantly, people. A really good read, particularly if you're a history GCSE student, because it does talk a lot about medical development. Right, the second book I'm going to review for you, I've actually read in 3 nights. I enjoyed it that much. So it's a very small book. It's called Longitude, and it's by an American author called David Sobel, who I hadn't heard of before. And my brother gave me this for Christmas because he knows I like maps, and it's actually about something I had never ever heard of. So, back in the 1700s, the people around the world, the great developed nations, so Holland, Spain, the UK, were beginning to travel by boat great distances. So there was great expeditions over to America, the Caribbean, Africa, and also India. And the boats that were being used, great big galleons used to trade. And the book is all about how those boats would navigate themselves by using the sun and the stars and the planets. And in the 1700s, all sailors around the world had one problem. They knew where they were parallel to the equator anywhere in the world by looking at the stars and looking at the moon and looking at the planets. They knew exactly where they were parallel to the equator. But up until the 1700s, not one boat could tell where they were vertically perpendicular to the equator. And that is because The vertical position is to do with time. And back in the 1700s, there was no clocks or no technological development that could allow you to tell the time accurately when you are on the sea. And what this little gem of a book does is it gives you a bit of a romp through the 1700s and the race in the world to find who could discover how to see where you were, your longitude was, or how you were vertically to the planet Earth, and the race to it. There's a bit of skullduggery in there, there's a bit of politics, there's prizes, there's royal ascent, there's squabbling, and behind it there's the genius of a young man called John Harrison. Humble man, came from Hull up in the north of England, and he in fact solved what was the biggest problem of the 1700s and travel. He actually worked out how to plot where you were using your longitude, and this book is about that. I have not enjoyed a quick read as much as I've enjoyed this for very many years, and it really is an excellent book to read if you are maybe a study of geography or a study of technology and you're interested in how technological developments have happened through the years. It is quite scientific, but the author has managed to stay away from very technical language. She's stayed away from equations. There's no mention of those. It is really, really well written, and I can honestly recommend it to anyone who's interested in geography and technology. So there you go, folks. My two lockdown books, The Hidden History of Britain and Longitude.